are the dire need by the Commission. Hence, the prosecution in the terrorism cases, in the terrorist cases, need an instant relief. Now, like the human rights, I take into prolong the theory of Ram Rajya is an ideal theory where there was a law and the human rights were available to all. It was in fact to all as laid in that. Human beings were treated without discrimination in all affairs of the society, and there was no explanation of any member of the society. But today, we desegregate certain things. As we all understand, today we need to give a stress on the basic, all human beings are born free in the equality and the dignity of rights within the respective countries. They are endowed with a reason to conscience and should act towards one another in the spirit of brotherhood. Like in Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, drafted in 1948, human rights, as mentioned, such rights which are vested in human beings which are universal and inviolable. Given the choice, people today need the right thinking in the right direction, seeking cooperation from the society, adoption and appropriate policies which the government needs to amend in the legislation, in the laws, in the functioning of the courts. Such remedial policies should be adopted so that different countries or our country does not lag behind today in this aspect. I'll segregate into short as being conveyed for the precise time of 7 minutes. Like terrorism is an criminal act that influences an audience beyond the immediate victim. For example, in 1972, leave aside the present scenario of the terrorist attack. Such a disaster happened in 1972, which I'd like to quote before the esteemed members sitting here. That is the Munich Olympics. The Black September organization killed 11 Israelis. The Israelis were immediate victims, but the true target was later estimated that 1 billion people watching the televised event. The Black September organization used the highly visibility of the Olympics to publicize its views on the plight of the Palestinian refugees. It is not now. Later on, the immediate victims were about 240 US military personnel who were killed and over 100 were wounded. The target was the American people and the US Congress. Now the primary objectives, at my conclusion of this brief topic, the primary objectives of the effective counter-terrorism effort are to safeguard the human rights, strengthening the policies, the social laws, the economic laws, and above all, the condition, upbringing, and the progressive of the country. Thus, it is critical to strike a just balance between the ensuring the security and the integrity of the country, but safeguarding of the human rights is a necessity of the legal fraternity, of the jury, precisely to come up in a form of bar and bench today. Human rights violation by the states, its agencies occur in various settings during the cordon of such operations. In every operations today, the social and the legislative bylaws and the universal human rights articles need to be amended, and such all at a time. It is imperative to take a relook at the judicial process. To my concluding lines, with the permission of the Honorable Chairman, at the time it is imperative to take a relook at the judicial process to prosecute those accused by being involved in terrorist activities. They need to be having an instant evidence, instant trial, and placed under the stringent punishment. As we have witnessed in 9/11 or in the disaster over the terror attacks and in the Mumbai attacks. Speedy trial is an important objective to achieve to assure the guilty are punished on spot and the innocent are not always awaiting justice. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.
Dignitaries of the dais and ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure in presenting a paper on the subject Human Rights and Terrorism before this prestigious congregation organized by the International Council of Jurists. The object, human rights and terrorism, is the present burning global problem with which every human being in all the countries throughout the world, the richest to the poorest, is horrified and worried about and all the precious human rights of all human beings in the entire world, in all the countries, are at stake at the hands of the terrorist groups working in almost all the countries and causing colossal damage to the lives and properties, and particularly the precious human rights. The entire world is looking forward at this International Council of Jurists to take up the cause seriously and suggest a practical solution for uniform application throughout the world to eradicate the terrorism and attack on human rights. I wholeheartedly assert that we, the members of the International Council of Jurists, in particular with the cooperation of National Human Rights Commission of India, All India Bar Association and the Indian Council of Jurists, should indulge in exhaustive deliberations, particularly in the first working session on the subject of human rights, and evolve solutions regarding immediate steps to be taken to eradicate the evil of terrorism by consistent pragmatic effort. If terrorism is causing damage to human rights, purport to right to protect their properties, and above all, the peace. Nowadays, the acts of terror and violence are perpetrated through various methods to achieve their objective, to subvert the system. The origin of this terrorism can be traced to the origin of the human race itself. When in those days ago, when the human race was living just on the natural resources, terrorism has been used by some Muslim men who are forming themselves into small groups and occupy the thickly populated areas and taking the entire population in the said areas under their control. That's how it is started. If we look back, it can be recalled that UNO adopted the Declaration of Human Rights on 10th December 1948. The said declaration ensures to every human being in the world his birthright to live a life without any discrimination on the basis of caste, religion, or sex. So, as declaration adopted by the United Nations organization express that it is the birthright of every human being to enjoy the human rights. In the entire universe, one of the special species with life is human being, a unique being with unique powers created by the great architect of the universe called God. And in the beginning of the universe, when the human being has been created, inherently the human rights are conferred by the architect of the universe. Thus, the origin of the human rights in the entire world can be traced to the beginning of the universe itself. It is universally known that the great architect of the universe has provided the human beings the natural resources like unpolluted air, pure water, great earth, the plants, the trees, with all fruits and creepers and beautiful flowers, the rivers and lakes full of pure water. All these items put together are essential for comfortable living of every human being, and it is a birthright of every human being to enjoy the nature's gift without any hindrance or interference from any quarter. When we think terrorism in ultimate analysis is an attack on the human right and depriving the humanity the benefits of gifts of nature from the great architect of the universe. This is a new angle I am trying to throw for this congregation to consider and decide. Of course, the Magna Carta on England Charter issued in the year 1215 AD has been the first passed law in the Greater Charter of Liberties of England, declared the human rights passed in 1297, still remains in the statute book of England. Now, a reference may be made to the great document in the entire world, namely the Constitution of India, which is in relation to the very large democracy in the entire world. The human rights being complex and unimaginable, some of them only could be expressly provided in this great document, namely Constitution of India. Now, coming to the reasons for this terrorism and how they are emanating. Almost all the countries in the world, families below the poverty line are plenty. The children from such families are always unhappy and dissatisfied, and they are not able to enjoy the comforts as other children. Such children of countries will be creating problems at home. Majority of the children are prone to be attracted by the camps maintained by the terrorist groups with a hope that their unfulfilled desires will be satisfied at the end by the promises and luring to the terrorists. In such camps, these children will be given good treatment in food, clothing, games and sports, and at the same time training them up forming war groups. By an analysis of these things, the root cause is dissatisfaction of children from the families below the poverty line. It is a duty of the state to investigate and find out the root cause and try to eradicate them. One solution to the problems appears to be that the state should take the children of tender ages from the families below the poverty line and should give them the necessary education till they attain the age of earning. All such children should be properly groomed and their public energies are to be channelized to use the energies in constructive activities, as the youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. Unless the youth are taken care of and they are prevented from indulging in destructive activities, the further of the country will be at peril. For the said purpose, a perfect legislation with stringent provisions is necessary. This International Conference of Jurists 2010, after deep deliberation, should evolve the format as the basis for great legislation to be adopted, as there is need to make a uniform legislation to control the funding of the terrorist groups in several ways. In this regard, the legislative, executive and judicial institutions must exercise their power and authority to protect the innocent citizens from fears and prejudices, and they should meet the challenge of terrorism with innovative ideas and approaches. The learned jurists, as a class known to be intelligent in the society, will have to suggest the strong and positive efforts to put forth the institutions, legislative, executive and judiciary. This problem has to be studied at depth, taking into consideration the activities and the attacks of the terrorists, and suggest the making of perfect legislation and evolve the schemes to be adopted by the persons and institutions charged with high power. It is also desirable to provide through such legislation a terrorist preventive force. A terrorist preventive force is to be created, specially designed and trained in the task of curbing the initiation of terrorist attitudes in the school children and even the college students. Apart from this preventive measure, a different force is to be put in action to carry on the combing activities to identify the places and groups indulging in carrying on training activities and also terrorist action in planning and attempting to the terrorist. A separate wing has to be developed as intelligence wing to investigate into the possibilities of developing the terrorist activities at certain places with certain individuals involving, so that preventive action may be taken for sweeping out these terrorist outfits. Another positive desirable activity is to be carried out to identify the individuals either having terrorist views and those getting trained in terrorist camps, and those who are indulging in terrorist activities, bring them out from the clutches of the training groups. There is another aspect which requires serious attention. In recent times, it has come to light that neighboring countries are indulging in encouraging the terrorist attacks into the adjacent countries. It has also come to light that the government of said countries are aiding and funding such agencies. The encouragement and cooperation with such countries must be detected, and the facts and figures must be put before the Security Council of the United Nations to take stern action. It may be recalled that about 30 years ago, the General Assembly of United Nations adopted a resolution of terrorism to unequivocally condemn all acts of international terrorism which endanger or take human lives or jeopardize fundamental freedom. In the same year, the General Assembly adopted a cancelled the International Convention against the taking of hostages. By 1991, 9 conventions have been held to deal with such aspects of terrorism. In 1994, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted without vote the Declaration on Measures to Eliminate International Terrorism. In the year 2001, after the attacks on the World Trade Center in Pentagon, the Security Council adopted a resolution on 12 September 2001 which stated in the preamble in a general way that terrorist acts cause threats to international peace and security. Now, conclusion, the need of the day now is global awakening about human rights and the threat that terrorism has posed to human rights or the people.
I call Mr. Parmarthi Venkatraman, Advocate of Supreme Court.
Chief Justice and Chairman National Commission, Human Commission of India, distinguished speakers, friends, ladies and